Hi guys, my name is James Skinner, and this is my presentation on tort liability and tort laws. So a tort law is described as an act or omission that gives rise to injury or harm to another and amounts to a civil wrong for which courts impose liability. It's basically the court's way of if you wrong someone in some way, shape, or form, that they can get monetary value or some sort of compensation for that wrong. I have a few cases to go over here, and if I mess up the names, sorry. But we have Ian Ofu and versus the St. Luke's School. This case involved an eighth grade private school student who was disciplined for engaging in inappropriate touching of female classmates. It's an eighth grade student, so like this is something that needs to be taken care of. The school suspended the student for 3 days and required him to attend counseling before he returned. The parents sued the school and the principal, arguing that school breached its contract with them because the school did not follow its handbook in handling the matter, and the student's constitutional rights were violated because no due process was afforded in the discipline proceeding, and the school committed various torts against the student. The court found that the actions taken by the school were within their decision. They also found that private schools are vested with broad discretion in the manner in which they discipline students. So basically, the courts decided that the parents were not in an agreement in the handbook when it came to this situation. There was no binding contract or anything like that, and that it gave them more discretionary powers when it came to applying this discipline of the students. And I think if this were to happen at our school, we would have a very similar action taken. I would believe that the student would be suspended. We actually did have this happen somewhat recently, and that similar action would be taken requiring, it'd be based on the severity, but requiring counseling, that kind of stuff. In order to avoid this, I'd imagine we'd have more like school-wide training for the students and the staff alike on what is and isn't appropriate physical contact and behavior, especially at grades like 8th grade, 7th grade, 6th grade, where maybe they're just kind of starting to go from kindergarten or elementary school, where it was usually okay to be rather physically contacted with your peers, to something when like the high school level where it's like a lot of physical boundaries are in place and that kind of fun stuff. My next case is Johnson Johnson versus the District of Millard. A first grader, Johnson was injured while playing London Bridge in the music classroom, resulting in a large cut above his eye requiring stitches. The teacher taught the students how to play the game for the first time and allowed the game to start without the teacher giving direct supervision. Basically, she told them the rules and then turned her back on the situation I think it was to deal with another student. During the first time the game was played, Johnson was in the middle of the London Bridge part, and there was an accident where he ended up falling or getting thrown or in some way roughhoused, and then he was injured in the resulting accident. There are some odd details considering this was first grade, and so some of the details and most of the accounts were given by the students, and first graders have some interesting concept of time, but that led to the court to rule in Johnson's favor, citing that the teacher was negligent in their supervision. I think in this situation, we probably would. It's hard. I teach at high school, so it's kind of hard for me to kind of put in the elementary school level. But I think the student would have been treated. Obviously, like anytime there's a student injured, whether it's school fault or not, the student gets treated. But I don't think any action would have been taken against the teacher because this feels like it was a really odd. I know the courts will take things differently than like a school board, but I don't know if the teacher was super directly at fault in this situation. However, in order to prevent this kind of thing, I think, especially at an elementary school, there should be discussion on proper modeling of behaviors, especially when it comes to physical behaviors. Some child might be very aggressive in their physical nature, while others might be very timid. And so you want to make sure that everyone's on the same playing field. Especially at younger ages, you need to walk them through what is and isn't appropriate behavior because they oftentimes don't know what that might be. So making sure that you discuss the proper modeling and stuff. In my next case, Frame versus Comu. Frame was an 8th grade student who was injured by the substitute teacher of the class currently. Comu tried to remove him from the class for disruption during a spelling test. After asking Frame to leave the room twice, he he confronted Frame, and then when Frame was getting up, he attempted to grab him by the wrist and pull him from the classroom. The action resulted in Frame losing his balance and falling down. He hit a podium and then somehow landed on the blackboard. Not quite sure how that worked. Frame filed suit alleging that Comio's actions constituted an assault and battery on him, and Frame argued that Comio attacked him and that his attack was unprovoked. The court found that although Comio committed battery, he was justified in doing so to maintain order and learning in the classroom. I found this one was fairly interesting because they did agree that he did commit battery, which is interesting, but he was not he wasn't convicted of assault or anything like that because he was justified in doing so to maintain order in the classroom in order to allow for learning to continue. I think in my school, it would have been very similar. He would have been checked for injuries. Obviously, anytime a student falls, that needs to be done. But I don't think that the teacher would have been disciplined for disorderly conduct or anything like that. However, the student probably would have been some form of disrespecting the teacher and all that kind of stuff, probably ending up with in-school suspension. That's usually how that kind of goes in my school. I think that's the wrong word. I think that the school should have got training in de-escalation of the situation and proper handling of students in that kind of manner. So instead of using some sort of physical confrontation like what appears to have happened, you need to find a way to do it in such a manner that avoids the escalation of the aggressive behavior. In Flanagan versus Canton, Flanagan, a fifth grade student, was pushed while on his way to change in the locker room after what appeared to be a relatively rowdy PE class. The teacher had to have discussion with them after the class before allowing them to go to the locker about something about the entire class being overtly physically rowdy. Canton, the teacher, was still in the gym speaking with another student about the behavior from the hour. Based on the events, Canton then, at some point in time on the way to the locker room, was pushed or shoved and fell and hit a bench of some kind, which caused some severe injury requiring surgery. Based on the events, Flanagan's mother sued the school district, alleging that her son's injuries were the result of negligent supervision by the teacher. The court ultimately sided with Flanagan, however, pointed out that although a school has a duty to adequately supervise its students, it is not an insurer of those students' safety. They also pointed out that the school is only liable for foreseeable injuries sustained by a student that were caused by inadequate supervision, which I thought was really interesting. As opposed to the previous one, in this situation, they also thought that he wasn't really at fault, saying that the school's not really liable for providing, unforeseeable safety for the students. However, they still ruled in favor of Flanagan, which was, I thought, kind of interesting. I think in this situation, the school would have taken no actions against the teacher, but the student who was responsible, if that could be proven, would probably have been suspended in some form or fashion, and then emergency medical treatment given to the student that fell. I think training, once again, would be needed on de-escalation of potentially violent behaviors. That seems to be a pretty common trend, especially in the middle school level. There happens to be a lot of quicker tempers and that kind of thing that might arise. And so there needs to be a lot of training for both the teachers and the kids on how to avoid that kind of behavior. All right. In this case, Bartek versus the Millard School District, David died as a result of a golfing accident that occurred while the students were practicing indoors within close proximity to each other. Basically, he was not there for the first day of practice and came on the second day. And the first day is when they talked about safety procedures and all that kind of thing. And on the second day, they were practicing a golf swing, and one of the students was showing David how to do the swing. And he basically said he'd do 2 practice swings, and then on the third swing, he decided to do a real one. And he did the swing and did not realize that David had approached him from behind and on the follow-through managed to hit David in the head. And I guess that caused a concussion and ended up in his death 2 days later. David's mother brought a wrongful death action against the Millard School District as a result. The courts found that the school district was negligent in their supervision of the students that resulted in the death of David. There were 2 coaches for both the girls and boys team, and I guess there was a lot of people, and they were working with other students. And the courts basically found that they were negligent for not being observant of the fact that David had not been there the first day and did not receive the necessary training information to avoid the situation that happened. I, in all honesty, do not know how our school would respond to this. I have no experience on what would happen with the death of a student in the school in a situation like that. I don't know. In order to avoid it, we would probably need to do some sort of proper training and following the procedures that are already in place. One of the biggest things that happened in this situation was they did have a proper procedure for exercising indoors and golf swings, and it was not directly followed. So maybe that would have led to more safety for the students, and then adequate staff supervision. If you have 30 some odd golf members, maybe 2 people is not enough for that. I don't know if that's the case or not, but it could be something along those lines. These are the references for my sources that I found, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks.